The lights above him were too bright. The air smelled like metal and medicine. Something beeped slowly near his head. As Corporal Daniel Hayes opened his eyes, he felt like he had been asleep for years. He tried to sit up, but his muscles didn't move. Only his eyes worked, slowly blinking as he scanned the strange white room. It wasn't a hospital, not a human one at least. The walls were curved, glowing softly with a blue light, and the ceiling looked like stars were dancing on it then. He felt it, a gentle cold touch on his chest, fingers, but thinner than human ones, and glowing faintly like soft jellyfish tendrils brushing his skin. Daniel turned his head slowly. Standing beside him was a tall, slender figure with smooth, violet skin. She had large, silver eyes and no hair. Her long fingers gently moved over his ribs, scanning with some kind of glowing device. She didn't speak at first, just looked at the monitor beside his bed, and then leaned closer. Daniel tried to speak, but only a dry cough came out. She looked startled, then quickly reached for a silver flask and pressed it to his lips. "Don't move too much," she said softly. Her voice had an echo, almost musical. "You are healing, human." Daniel coughed again and managed a weak smile. "Where am I?" "You are aboard the Galactic Red Cross ship Valoria," she replied. "You were rescued from the battlefield on Vexor 7. Your injuries were severe." Daniel closed his eyes for a second. Yes. He remembered now, the ambush, the plasma. Fire, falling, pain in his leg, his side. Then blackness. "I'm alive?" "Yes," she said calmly. "Because of us." Her hands moved lower now, checking his stomach and side. She didn't seem nervous at all until her hand moved under the blanket to check the lower part of his body. Suddenly she froze. Her glowing fingers stopped just below his waist. Her silver eyes went wide. The soft blue on her cheeks changed color, turning pinkish purple. She slowly pulled her hand back and stared at the monitor, then back at his body. I need to call a superior," she whispered to herself. Daniel blinked in confusion. "What is it?" he croaked. "What's wrong?" She didn't answer, just tapped her wrist device rapidly. Moments later, the door slid open and two more aliens entered, both nurses, both just as tall and elegant. The first nurse whispered something in their language, pointing toward the monitor. They all stared at Daniel's lower body as if something dangerous was growing there. Then one of them leaned in closer and murmured, "It's swelling rapidly." "Is it internal bleeding?" Daniel's face went red. He realized what they were talking about. The swelling they were seeing wasn't a wound or a disease. It was something completely natural for a human male, especially one being touched like that. No, it's not what you think." Daniel shouted weakly. The nurse looked alarmed. "You are awake? Can you feel pain in that region?" "No. I mean, yes, but no, it's not pain, it's not injury," he said, trying to sit up. The second nurse activated a force field to gently hold him down again. "Please remain calm," she said. "This may be serious. We need to run a scan on the affected area." One of them grabbed a scanner and started scanning under the blanket again. The first nurse was visibly shaken, her hands trembling slightly. She leaned toward Daniel and whispered nervously, Is it spreading? Is it contagious?" Daniel nearly choked. "It's not a disease," he shouted. "It's just, look, I'm a guy. A human guy. That happens sometimes when..." He stopped himself, realizing there was no polite way to explain this. Their translator clearly didn't have words for this kind of biology. "I think he's delirious," one nurse said. The other nodded. "Inflammation may have reached the brain. I need to report this to the ship's chief medical officer," said the first nurse. But before she left, she looked back at him once more, confused and almost curious. Daniel lay back, groaning and covering his face with one hand. "I'm never going to live this down," he muttered. The nurse paused at the door, watching him. Then she whispered under her breath, "So that's human reproduction?" Daniel heard it and groaned louder. This was going to be the most embarrassing hospital stay in the galaxy. The medical bay lights dimmed as the emergency alert pulsed red above the door. Chief Medic Dr. Virali floated into the room with a tired Sci, her long green robe trailing behind her like mist. She was old by Zolari standards, which meant at least 2 centuries of medical knowledge and 0 patience for drama. She expected a real emergency, maybe a human's lungs collapsing. Or heart failure instead. She found 3 young nurses huddled in a circle, whispering and blushing lavender. The patient? Calm, conscious, and visibly annoyed. His blanket was pulled up to his chest like he was guarding a secret weapon. Dr. Virali narrowed her 4 eyes. Explain, she said sharply. Nurse Leary, the one who had first examined the human, stepped forward awkwardly. Chief Virali, during routine vitals, I discovered an unusual swelling between the patient's lower pelvic limbs. She spoke nervously. It was sudden, firm, and unexplainable. Virali raised one brow ridge. Was it bleeding? Glowing? Moving? No, Leary said, avoiding eye contact, but it changed shape as I touched it. The 2 other nurses nodded quickly. It responded to temperature. Changes, said one. It reacted to proximity, added the other. Virali blinked. Do you suspect it's a parasite? We initially thought so, said Leary, but then it went down. And then returned again when I leaned too close. Her voice got softer, and he seemed embarrassed. Virali turned toward the human, who was now staring at the ceiling with a dead expression. Human, identify yourself. He looked over slowly. Corporal Daniel Hayes, Earth Defense Forces. Patient number 442 Delta. What is the nature of this? Appendage? Is it dangerous? Daniel sighed. No, it's normal. It's biological, I promise. It's not infected or out of control. Virali crossed her arms. Then explain its behavior. Daniel blinked. Yuacha. It's a reaction to touch and attention, and sometimes even warmth. He paused, his face going red. It's not life-threatening unless you count embarrassment. Leary raised her hand, confused. Chief, if I may, I checked the Galactic medical database. There's no record of this organ in the human schematics we were provided. Virali opened her medical scanner and reviewed the ship's internal database. She zoomed in on the human anatomy file, and sure enough, the male reproductive organ was censored. It had a warning label, cultural privacy barrier, not for casual study. Virali groaned loudly. Of course. Earth's privacy ethics, Daniel shrugged weakly. We kinda like to keep that stuff private. Leary tilted her head. So it's not dangerous? But it does expand without conscious control. Correct, he said. Often in the morning, or when nervous. Or when, he coughed. Well, when touched by a beautiful alien nurse. All 3 nurses gasped, their faces glowing bright blue. Leary covered her mouth. Oh stars, I infected him with attraction. Virali turned away to hide a laugh and cleared her throat. This is no medical emergency. It is romantic biology. Romantic what now? Daniel muttered, covering his face again. Virali looked at the nurses. This is a rare learning moment. Make notes. Human males have autonomous mood-based inflation systems. She paused. They are not harmful, but they are clearly sensitive to emotional and physical contact. Leary raised her hand again. Should we avoid touching him completely? Daniel sat up a little, smirking. I mean, unless it's medically required, I wouldn't mind. Leary blinked twice. Oh no. He's reacting again. Virali turned to exit the room. Assign only 1 nurse for observation. Preferably the one he reacts least to. Leary raised her hand immediately. I volunteer. For science, Virali glanced back. You already made him react twice. Nurse Leary. Leary stood straighter. Then I believe I am the most qualified to control the reactions. Daniel groaned. I'm never going to live this down, am I? Virali stepped out and muttered under her breath. Humans. Even their organs flirt without permission. Leary couldn't sleep that night, not because she was worried, but because her mind was overflowing with questions and images. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered the moment it moved. The human's body had reacted not to injury, not to danger, but to her. She wasn't trained for that. She was trained to treat burns, seal wounds, and patch plasma holes, not handle romantic reactions. But now, she had volunteered for the most peculiar medical case aboard the Valoria, and she wasn't about to fail, not when her curiosity had now turned into something else, something warmer. She sat in her small cabin, surrounded by glowing holopads. Each one showed human anatomy diagrams, ancient Earth documentaries, and strangely blurred footage labeled human mating behavior, viewer discretion advised. Leary leaned forward, fascinated. So that's what it's for, she whispered to herself, eyes wide. She paused the video and rewound it again, watching frame by frame. Her cheeks glowed pink-purple now, a shade reserved only for deep emotional confusion. I touched that, she muttered, then immediately covered her mouth in horror. Twice, she stared into the mirror across her room. What do I do now? He thinks I made it happen. With a touch, she poked her own fingers. Is it my touch? Or me? She didn't know what scared her more, that he reacted automatically, or that she wanted to see it happen again. The next morning, Leary walked into the human's recovery room holding a fresh data pad and a shaking hand. Corporal Daniel Hayes sat upright, reading a translated space journal and chewing dried fruit cubes. When he saw her, he gave a slow, cautious smile. Oh, it's you, he said. Back for another round of surprises? She froze at the doorway. I have studied your species. Male functions, she said bluntly. Daniel choked on a fruit cube and started coughing. You studied what? She stepped closer, holding the pad like a shield. I now understand that it was not a mutation or swelling. She paused. It was a sign of interest, attraction, perhaps even reproduction potential. Daniel buried his face in both hands. Oh my God, you really looked it up, Leary nodded, fully serious. It is my duty as a nurse to understand all functions, especially ones that react without warning. She tapped the pad. I have compiled a list of triggers, patterns, and safe procedures. Daniel peeked through his fingers. You made a manual for it? She tilted her head. Yes, would you like to review it? He laughed awkwardly. Not really, no. I think I've got enough experience living with it. There was an odd silence between them. Then Leary looked down, her voice softer. I need to ask something. Please don't laugh. Daniel straightened up, suddenly serious. Okay, ask. When it happened, did you feel drawn to me? Daniel stared at her, blinking. It wasn't the question itself that shocked him, it was the hope in her voice. He scratched the back of his neck. Well, yeah, I mean, you're beautiful, alien or not. And you touched me, he shrugged. It's hard not to react. Leary's cheeks turned bright pink. So, it's not just biology. He shook his head. No. If it was just biology, it wouldn't still happen when you walk in the room. She blinked, her hands tightening around the pad. I see, she whispered, then carefully placed the pad on the table and sat beside his bed. I have a suggestion, she said after a moment. What if we continue the study? Daniel raised an eyebrow. You mean, like, a scientific study? Yes, she said quickly, for learning purposes. Only, then added quietly. Unless you don't mind me learning more, he smiled gently. Okay, Nurse Leary, just tell me when the next test begins. She looked down at his hand resting beside her, without asking. She reached out and placed her fingers over his. It happened again. A slight jolt between them, like static electricity. She pulled her hand back in surprise. Daniel smirked. See? Still works, Leary smiled for the first time. Then let's see how often, she said, tapping her pad and beginning test number 3, hand contact. Daniel laughed. This might be the best experiment of my life. Nurse Leary stood before the Galactic Medical Review panel with her back straight and her chin high. Behind her, holoscreens showed a glowing chart titled Case Number 442D, Voluntary Emotional and Physical Response Monitoring of Human Male Subject. The senior physician leaned forward and narrowed his four golden eyes. You want to move into the patient's room? Leary nodded confidently. For science, she said, closer proximity increases response patterns. Only through continuous observation can we understand the full scope of these natural reactions. Another doctor whispered. She touched him once and now wants to sleep beside him. Leary ignored the murmurs. I will maintain a strictly professional boundary. Unless biological response requires otherwise. The panel exchanged glances, then sighed. Fine. Approved for 3 rotations. Full documentation required, Leary bowed, hiding a smile. She didn't mention that she had already packed her sleep mat. That evening, Daniel was halfway through a boring alien documentary about galactic digestive diversity when the door slid open. Leary stepped inside carrying a folded blanket, her medical pad, and a small pillow with glittering beads on the edge. He blinked. Sleepover? She placed her things on the bench and nodded. I have been assigned to remain in your presence. Around the clock, she paused. For monitoring purposes, Daniel raised an eyebrow. You sure this is about monitoring and not flirting? Leary walked closer, standing at the edge of his bed. I don't know how to flirt. I only know how to study. Then she added softly. But I'm willing to learn. Daniel suddenly felt warmer. He slid over on the bed, giving her space to sit. Okay, Professor Leary, what's your first test tonight? They sat side by side, not touching at first. Leary tapped the pad and said, Test number 7, Nighttime Proximity Response. She moved an inch closer, then looked at him. No reaction. Move again, he said, smirking. She shifted. Now their shoulders touched. The monitor beside his bed beeped once. Leary's eyes widened. It works. Again, Daniel chuckled. It's not a switch you flip. I'm not a machine. Then after a pause he added, but you do something to me, and not just, That, she tilted her head. What else do I do? He looked at her really. Looked, you make me feel calm, like even though I'm far from Earth. I'm not alone anymore. Leary blinked slowly, her gaze softening. I was never meant to treat humans. I asked for this duty because I read one of your poems, Daniel blinked. A poem? She nodded. It said, a stranger's hand can still feel like home. He looked down at her hand resting between them. Without words, he placed his own over it. The soft beep came again from the monitor. Leary smiled. I think I need to update the study. She leaned her head gently against his shoulder. Test number 8, Shared Warmth Response. Daniel didn't speak. He just let the moment settle. Outside, the stars drifted past the window. Inside, for the first time, he didn't feel like a broken soldier in a strange galaxy. He felt seen. Later that night, Daniel woke up to a strange sound. He blinked. In the dark and turned slightly, Leary was curled up beside him, her back gently rising and falling, but her hands twitched, her brow furrowed. Was she dreaming? Did aliens dream? Suddenly she whispered, barely audible, Don't leave. Daniel sat up slightly and placed a hand on her arm. I'm right here, he whispered. Her eyes opened slowly, and in the low light, she looked vulnerable. I thought you were gone, she admitted softly. I had a dream. You disappeared. Like all the others, he brushed a lock of silver hair from her face. Well, I'm still here, he said. And I'm not going anywhere unless you push me out the airlock. She blinked away whatever fear had crept in. Then smiled weakly. I'll adjust your blanket settings to prevent that. He laughed, and she leaned closer. They didn't need to test anything more that night. Some things didn't need measuring. The next morning, the medical bay was quiet. No alarms, no scans, no awkward inflations. Just the soft hum of systems and a human laughing. Daniel was laughing. Not because something was funny, but because Nurse Leary was wearing socks on her ears. Are you seriously trying to wear clothes the human way? He chuckled. Leary looked up proudly. I studied Earth fashion protocols all night. This is called cozy morning style. Daniel tried to keep a straight face. Those are socks, Leary. For feet, not ear flaps. She blinked twice, then tugged one off. Oh, she said flatly. Then why do humans smile when they receive them as gifts? Daniel laughed again. I don't know. It's a tradition. Sometimes a strange one. Leary smiled, pleased with herself. I made you something, she said, reached behind her. She handed him a small, clumsy bracelet made from repurposed med wires and tiny star-shaped beads. I saw human males give jewelry to females. I wanted to reverse it. Daniel stared at the gift in silence. His fingers touched it slowly. It wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful. I love it, he said honestly, her face flushed soft pink. You do? Yeah, he said, slipping it on. I've never been gifted space junk so gracefully. She smiled wide. Your sarcasm levels are improving. Over the next few days, everything changed between them, quietly, gently, beautifully. The tests became excuses, the scans turned into shared stories, and the monitoring involved more smiles and teasing than beeping machines. Leary began spending less time with her datapads and more time copying his human behaviors. She practiced smiling in the mirror. She sat with her legs crossed, even though her bones weren't made for that. She even tried jokes. Why did the plasma beam go to school? She asked once. Daniel raised an eyebrow. No idea, she said. To get brighter. Then laughed so hard she snorted. Daniel didn't even care that it was a terrible joke. He just laughed with her because she was glowing, alive, happy one. Evening, as the lights dimmed for the ship's night cycle, Leary walked into the room holding 2 mugs. Hydration, she said, offering him a blue steaming drink. He sniffed it, then paused. This smells like burnt jelly beans, she smiled. It's called thaler root extract. Said to enhance emotional sensitivity. Daniel raised a brow. Wait. Are you trying to make me emotional? She tilted her head. Maybe. You rarely say how you feel. Maybe this will help. Daniel took a sip, coughed, then laughed. Okay. Truth serum it is. He set the cup down, looked at her seriously. Leary, do you know what's happening between us? She looked unsure. I know something. Unfamiliar is forming. Something not in the medical files. He nodded. Same here. He reached out, took her hand gently. I like you. Not just as a nurse, not just because you're curious. I like you. Because you care. Because you listen. Because you're you. Leary's breath caught. No human had ever said something like that to her, not even during the many interspecies medical exchanges. Her voice shook. I believe, I feel the same. When you are in pain, I feel it too. When you laugh, something warm spreads through my core. She paused. And when you sleep, I stay awake just to watch you breathe. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. That sounds romantic and a tiny bit creepy, Leary blinked. Then, I am doing it right. Daniel chuckled and pulled her hand closer. Exactly right. Later that night, she lay beside him, not as a nurse, not as a monitor, but as something more. Her head rested lightly on his shoulder. His arm curled protectively around her. No machines beeped, no tests ran, no words were spoken. Only one thought passed between them without needing to be said. Something real was growing here, and neither of them wanted it to stop. Asterisk. The lights in the room were soft and golden. Artificial sunset mode, designed to calm patients before sleep, but tonight, Daniel wasn't sleepy, and neither was Leary. She sat cross-legged on the edge of his bed, flipping through her datapad, but she wasn't reading. She kept sneaking glances at him, at the way his chest rose and fell, the curve of his jaw, and the way his eyes were already watching her back. He smiled. You're pretending to study. Leary looked down quickly. Observation is ongoing, she said softly. But it's difficult to focus when the subject stares so openly. Daniel chuckled. I'm not the only one staring, you know. She hesitated, then closed the pad. Then perhaps I should perform one final inspection. He sat up slowly. You mean a medical inspection? She tilted her head. Yes, she said, voice low. Unless you prefer a personal one. The air between them changed, warmer, heavier, like the gravity had increased slightly. Neither moved, yet everything was already happening. Leary reached out, her fingers trembling slightly as they brushed his cheek. She leaned forward, studying his face as if it held a secret she had longed to learn. Your skin heats up when I'm near, she whispered. Your pupils widen. Your breathing changes. Daniel nodded, his voice quiet. That's because I like you. Her eyes met his soft, glowing, unsure but open. I like you too, she replied. I think I have for a while. But I did not know how to say it. Without a medical form, Daniel laughed gently. You're doing fine. He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. Their fingers laced together like they belonged. She climbed onto the bed beside him, not for care, not for duty, but to feel. He brushed her silver hair behind her ear. She placed a hand gently on his chest, feeling the rhythm of his heart. Her voice shook. It's fast. He smiled. It's for you. Their faces drew closer. Their breath mingling. Leary paused, just inches away. I've never done this before. Not even with my own kind. Daniel leaned closer. Then we'll figure it out. Together, just as their lips were about to meet, whoop whoop. The room exploded with red lights. An emergency alarm blared across the ship. Training. Drill initiated. All staff report to stations. Non-combatants remain in place. Daniel groaned. You've got to be kidding me. Leary jumped slightly, clearly annoyed for the first time. She looked at the speaker, eyes narrowed. Why now? We were progressing. Daniel laughed, flopping back against the pillow. Well, I guess the galaxy isn't ready for a human-alien love story just yet. Leary sighed and laid down beside him again. This is the third time we've been interrupted. Daniel turned to her, smirking. Maybe the universe wants us to build tension first. She blinked. I do not enjoy this tension thing. Then paused. But I enjoy being near you during it. He smiled and pulled her closer as the ship's fake emergency lights flashed. She rested her head against him, muttering. If they interrupt us again, I may deactivate the alarm system permanently. Daniel grinned. I'll help. Hours later, after the drill ended and silence returned, they remained together. No more pretending, no more awkward checkups, only real warmth, a shared heartbeat, and the kind of closeness that no scanner could measure. Corporal Daniel Hayes was finally cleared for active duty. No more 4 tubes, no more endless scans. The bruises on his ribs were healed. His legs strong again. Even his hair had grown back where the plasma burn had singed it. The human was ready to leave the Valoria, but he didn't feel ready. Not for the goodbye he knew was coming. He stood quietly near the shuttle bay, holding his duffel bag. His orders were simple. Return to Earth, rest for a week, and then report for light duty. But his heart wasn't obeying orders. Behind him, soft footsteps echoed. He didn't need to turn to know it was her. He could feel Leary's presence like gravity pulling at his chest. I see you've been discharged, she said, her voice too calm to be casual. He nodded without looking. Yeah, guess they think I'm all fixed up now. Leary stepped beside him and folded her hands behind her back. But you're not smiling. Daniel let out a breath. I was hoping. Maybe you'd give me a reason to stay. She looked at him, stunned. I am the reason you're leaving, she said quietly. I did my job. You recovered. He turned to her, gently touching her arm. You didn't just fix my body. Leary, you made me laugh again. Feel something again. I was dead inside when I came here. I just didn't know it. Her eyes glistened. But I'm not human. I don't belong on your world, Daniel shrugged. So? Earth has dogs with 3 legs, birds that don't fly, and people who fall in love for the weirdest reasons. You'd fit right in. She tried to smile, but it wobbled. I don't know how to live like your kind. Then learn, he said softly. With me. There was silence between them as the boarding signal echoed through the dock. Final. Call. Earthbound Shuttle 3 departing in 5 minutes. Leary looked at the shuttle, then back at him. I'm not allowed to abandon my post. Daniel nodded slowly. Then don't, he whispered, stepping closer. Transfer it to me. She blinked in surprise. You want me as your personal nurse? He grinned. Nurse, research partner, breakfast companion, laughing partner, bed-sharing cuddler. I don't care what the title is, just come with me. Her lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came out. Instead, she stepped forward and hugged him tightly. No scanners, no data pads, no barriers, just heart to heart. I'll need daily monitoring, she whispered into his shoulder. He chuckled. I can arrange that. 10 minutes later, the shuttle door hissed shut. Daniel took the window seat, and Leary sat beside him. Clutching her tiny silver case of notes, she stared out the window at the stars slowly turning. This is the first time I've left a ship, she admitted. He reached over and held her hand. Don't worry. I'll be your guide, she smiled. Good, because I already have my next experiment. Oh yeah? Daniel asked, raising an eyebrow. What is it? She turned to him, her cheeks softly glowing. I want to find out how many kisses a human can take before short-circuiting, he laughed. Well then, you better start testing soon. She leaned closer and whispered. Test number 1, long-duration lip contact. Then she kissed him slow, warm, and real. The shuttle rose toward the stars, and 2 hearts, 1 alien, 1 human, began a journey no medical chart could ever predict.